The call to arms. On a bright day, Earth looked stunning from space. The blue oceans glimmered under the sun, and green forests spread across the continents. But on one small planet, the mood was tense. In a control room on Mars, Commander Ava stared at the blinking lights on the screens. The atmosphere was thick with worry, and the air felt electric. Something was wrong. "Commander, we're receiving a distress signal from Colony Alpha," said Lieutenant Max, his voice shaky with concern. "They're under attack." Ava's heart sank. Colony Alpha was a small settlement on Mars, home to many brave humans. She could not let them down. She quickly turned to her team, a group of skilled soldiers who had trained for years. Each one had their own strengths, and together they'd formed a strong unit. "Everyone, listen up," Ava shouted, her voice steady. "We have a situation. Colony Alpha is in danger. We need to move fast. Gather your gear." The team sprang into action. They rushed to grab their equipment, adrenaline pumping through their veins. Ava watched them, proud of their dedication. Each soldier had a role to play, and they had trained hard for moments like this. As they prepared, Dr. Lyon, the team's scientist, approached Ava. "Commander, I've been analyzing the signal. It seems like they are being attacked by a new alien force. They call themselves the Varkarians. We don't know much about them yet." Ava nodded. "We need to find out more. Can you gather any information before we leave?" Dr. Lyon quickly worked on her computer, typing furiously. "I'll do my best, but we must hurry. The longer we wait, the more lives we risk." "Agreed," Ava replied. "We'll head to Colony Alpha now. Max, you're in charge of communications. Keep us in contact with the colony." Max nodded, his face serious. "Understood, Commander." With everyone ready, they boarded their ship, the Valor. The ship was sleek and powerful, designed for speed and agility. As they took off, Ava felt a sense of purpose. They were a team, and they would fight for their people. As the ship soared through space, Dr. Lyon shared what she had found. The Varkarians are known for their brutal tactics. They invade planets and take control. We must be careful. Ava listened carefully, her mind racing. What do we know about their technology? They use advanced weaponry and have powerful ships, but I believe we can find a way to outsmart them, Dr. Lyon replied, confidence shining in her voice. Good. We'll need every advantage we can get, Ava said. We can't let fear stop us. As they approached Colony Alpha, they could see the chaos unfolding below. The colony's buildings were damaged, and smoke rose into the sky. The sight filled Ava with anger and determination. Prepare for landing, she commanded. The crew sprang into action, each one focused on their task. They landed with a thud, and the doors opened to a scene of destruction. As they stepped outside, the air was thick with smoke and dust. Ava felt the heat of the fires nearby. People were running, trying to escape the Varkarians. The soldiers quickly moved to establish a perimeter. Dr. Lyon, help those in need, Ava ordered, her voice firm. Max, stay on the comms and coordinate with the remaining defenders. Yes, Commander, they replied, and the team split up to take action. Ava ran towards the center of the colony, where the fighting was fiercest. She could hear the sounds of blasters and shouts. The Varkarians were tall and fierce, with dark, scaly skin. They moved quickly, attacking anyone in their path. Ava spotted a group of soldiers fighting back bravely. They were outnumbered but not giving up. She felt a surge of pride for her fellow humans. They were courageous, even in the face of danger. Let's rally together, Ava shouted, raising her weapon. The soldiers looked to her for guidance. We can push them back. We need to protect our home. With renewed energy, the soldiers regrouped around Ava. They advanced together, firing at the Varkarians with precision. Ava moved with determination, using her training to outmaneuver the enemy. She could feel the fear around her, but she also felt the strength of her team. As they fought, Ava noticed Dr. Lion helping injured colonists to safety. She was providing medical assistance, her skills shining in this chaotic moment. Ava felt a mix of admiration and gratitude for her friend. They were fighting together, and it felt right. Suddenly, a loud roar echoed through the colony. The Varkarian leader appeared, towering over the others. His presence commanded attention and fear. Ava steeled herself. This was the moment they had prepared for. "Humans," the Varkarian leader bellowed, his voice filled with disdain. "You are weak. You will fall before us." Ava stepped forward, meeting his gaze. "We are not weak. We will fight for our home and for each other." The soldiers behind her shouted in agreement. They were ready to stand together, no matter the odds. With the battle raging around them, Ava realized that this was not just a fight for survival. It was a call to arms. Humanity would not be a victim. They would take a stand against the invaders. This was the beginning of something greater, a fight for their future, and a chance to prove that humanity was not to be underestimated. The battle was far from over, but Ava felt a spark of hope. They would fight, not just for themselves, but for every colony, every family, and every future generation. This was their moment to show the galaxy that humanity was ready to rise. The Varkarian onslaught. The air crackled with tension as the first skirmish erupted. Ava could hear blasters firing, and explosions rocked the ground beneath her feet. She took a deep breath, focusing her mind on the task at hand. This was not just a battle. It was a fight for survival. "Stay close," she shouted to her team, rallying them together. "We need to push forward and protect the civilians." The soldiers moved as one, forming a line to shield the fleeing colonists. Ava led the charge, her heart pounding in rhythm with the chaos around her. The Varkarians charged forward, their dark, scaly skin glinting ominously in the smoke-filled air. "Fire," Ava commanded, and her team opened fire. The bright blasts of their weapons lit up the darkened sky, illuminating the terrifying figures of their attackers. The Varkarians returned fire with brutal efficiency, their weapons spitting green energy that singed the ground around them. Ava ducked behind a fallen piece of debris, narrowly avoiding a bolt of energy that struck just inches from her. She took a moment to assess the situation. The Varkarians were relentless, and their numbers seemed to grow with each passing second. They were organized, displaying tactics that suggested they had fought many battles before. "Dr. Lion," Ava shouted, trying to locate her friend amidst the chaos. "We need a plan. We can't hold them back forever." "I'm on it," Dr. Lion called back, crouching behind a wall as she worked on her device. "I've been analyzing their movements. If we can create a diversion, I can set up a trap that might turn the tide." "Make it quick," Ava replied, her voice laced with urgency. "We need to buy some time." With a nod, Dr. Lion set to work, her fingers flying over the controls. Ava turned back to the fight, her eyes scanning for a moment of opportunity. She noticed a group of Varkarians breaking away from the main force, likely aiming to flank her team. "Max, cover that side," she shouted. "They're trying to surround us." Max quickly turned and fired at the Varkarians, doing his best to slow their advance. Ava joined him, her weapon blazing. Together, they created a wall of fire that forced the aliens to rethink their strategy. As the firefight continued, Ava's thoughts raced. They needed more firepower and a plan that could turn the tide. Suddenly, a loud boom echoed through the colony as Dr. Lion's device activated. "Now," Dr. Lion shouted, pressing the button that sent a wave of bright lights and loud noises into the air. The distraction worked, causing confusion among the Varkarians. They paused, unsure of what to do next. "Advance," Ava commanded, seizing the moment. The soldiers pushed forward, taking advantage of the chaos. They pressed the attack, determined to drive the Varkarians back. The tide of battle shifted slightly in their favor. But the Varkarians were not easily deterred. Regrouping, they charged again, more vicious than before. Ava could see their leader in the distance, barking orders. He was clearly furious at the disruption and focused his wrath on Ava and her team. "Fall back. Regroup," Ava yelled as she saw the ferocity in the Varkarian leader's eyes. They needed to hold their ground, but it was becoming increasingly difficult. As her team regrouped behind a makeshift barricade, Ava took a moment to catch her breath. She looked around at her soldiers, their faces showing determination, but also fatigue. They were giving everything they had, but the enemy seemed endless. "Dr. Lion, can you make another diversion?" Ava asked, trying to maintain hope. "Yes, but it requires time," Dr. Lion replied, glancing over her shoulder at the raging battle. "If we can lure them into a narrow space, I can create a powerful blast that will take out a significant number of them." "Then we'll need to be clever," Ava said, her mind racing. "Let's draw them in." With her plan in mind, Ava began shouting commands to her soldiers. "We need to create a distraction and fall back to that alley. Use everything we have to lure them in." The soldiers nodded, understanding the urgency. They began firing at the Varkarians, retreating slowly while making noise and creating a scene. The Varkarians, sensing victory, surged forward, eager to crush their human foes. "Now," Ava shouted as they reached the narrow alley. The soldiers dashed into the alley, retreating to safety, but keeping their fire on the advancing aliens. The Varkarians followed eagerly, drawn into the trap. As soon as they were in position, Dr. Lion activated her device again, and a blinding explosion erupted. The blast echoed through the colony, shaking the ground beneath them. The Varkarians screamed as the energy engulfed them, and a wave of shock swept through their ranks. "Push forward," Ava yelled, seizing the moment. The soldiers charged out of the alley, taking advantage of the confusion among the Varkarians. With renewed vigor, they pushed back against the enemy, fighting with everything they had. The tide of battle had shifted, and for the first time, they felt hope. Ava fought alongside her soldiers, her heart racing. They were doing it. They were pushing back against the Varkarian force, but they could not let up now. This battle was far from over. In that moment, Ava understood that they were not just fighting for survival. They were fighting for each other, for their homes, and for the future of humanity. The stakes were high, but they were ready to rise to the challenge, determined to show the galaxy that they were a force to be reckoned with. The turning tide. The chaos of battle enveloped Colony Alpha. The air crackled with energy, both from the blasters and the emotions of the soldiers. Ava could feel the tension in her muscles, each pulse of adrenaline driving her forward. The Varkarian forces were reeling from the blast, but they were regrouping quickly. "Stay focused," Ava called out to her team, her voice cutting through the noise. "We need to capitalize on this moment. Max, coordinate our fire. Dr. Lion, how long before you can set up another trap?" Dr. Lion, crouched behind a nearby wall, was already working. "Just a few minutes. I can rig something that will hit them hard again, but we need to hold them off until then." "Let's create a perimeter," Ava ordered. "We need to protect Dr. Lion while she works." The soldiers moved into position, forming a defensive line. They fired at the Varkarians, who were regaining their composure and preparing to counterattack. Ava could see the rage in their leader's eyes. He was not going to let this setback go unpunished. "Fire at will," Max shouted, and the team opened fire, creating a wall of bright light. The Varkarians charged forward, but their ranks were beginning to thin under the relentless assault. Ava felt a surge of determination. They had fought hard, and it was paying off, but she also knew that they had to remain vigilant. The Varkarians were smart, and they would adapt. "Dr. Lion, is there any way to gather intel on their movements?" Ava asked, glancing back at her friend, who was still focused on her device. "I'm scanning their communications now," Dr. Lion replied, her fingers flying across the screen. "If I can intercept their signals, I might be able to predict their next move." "Do it. We need every advantage we can get," Ava urged, her heart racing. The fight was far from over, and they could not afford to let their guard down. As Dr. Lion worked, Ava felt the pressure of leadership weighing heavily on her. She was responsible for her team, and she could feel the weight of their hopes resting on her shoulders. Suddenly, a loud roar echoed through the colony, and the Varkarian leader surged forward, rallying his troops. "Humans, you think you can defeat us? You are nothing," he bellowed, his voice booming. Ava stepped forward, raising her weapon. "We are not afraid of you," she shouted back. "We fight for our home and our people." The soldiers around her cheered, their spirits lifted by her words. They knew they were fighting for something greater than themselves. This was a battle for humanity's future. "Prepare for the next wave," Max yelled as he took aim at the approaching Varkarians. The aliens charged forward, their eyes glinting with determination. The ground shook with their powerful steps. As the two forces collided, the air filled with the sounds of blasters firing and shouts of battle. Ava fought fiercely, her heart pounding with each shot fired. She could see the Varkarian leader pushing through the chaos, his presence a dark cloud over the battlefield. "Dr. Lion, how much longer?" Ava shouted, dodging a blast that narrowly missed her. "Almost there. Just a little more time," Dr. Lion replied, her focus unbroken. Ava could see the soldiers struggling against the overwhelming Varkarian numbers. They were beginning to feel the weight of fatigue, but she refused to let them give up. "Hold the line. We can do this." Suddenly, Dr. Lion shouted, "I've got it." A moment later, a series of bright flashes lit up the sky as she activated her device. A shockwave burst from the center of the Varkarian formation, scattering them like leaves in the wind. "Now, push forward," Ava commanded, seizing the moment. The soldiers rallied behind her, charging into the fray with renewed energy. They fought fiercely, the tide of battle shifting in their favor. But just as victory seemed within reach, the Varkarian leader roared, rallying his troops once more. "You cannot win. We will crush you," he bellowed, his voice filled with rage. Ava felt a surge of fear, but she quickly pushed it aside. They could not give in to despair. "Keep fighting. We are stronger together," she shouted. The battle raged on, both sides clashing in a brutal struggle. Ava moved through the chaos, her instincts guiding her as she fought. She was focused, her mind sharp and clear. She could feel the weight of her team behind her, and it pushed her forward. As the fight continued, she caught a glimpse of Dr. Lion, still working furiously to assist the wounded and gather intelligence. Ava felt a wave of gratitude for her friend. They were in this together, and she would do everything to protect her. Just then, a group of Varkarians broke through the line, rushing toward Dr. Lion. "No," Ava shouted, her heart racing. She pushed through the crowd, determined to reach her friend before it was too late. "Dr. Lion, behind you," Ava cried, raising her weapon as she charged forward. Dr. Lion turned just in time to see the Varkarians approaching. Ava fired her blaster, hitting one of the attackers and causing the others to falter. "Get back," Ava yelled, pushing Dr. Lion to safety. "Stay close to me." The two friends moved together, fighting side by side. Ava felt a fierce determination burning within her. They would not be defeated. They would protect their home, no matter the cost. As the battle raged on, the soldiers began to push the Varkarians back. Each victory fueled their spirits. They were fighting for their survival, and they could not afford to lose. The tide was turning. Ava could feel it in her bones, but they needed to stay vigilant. The Varkarian leader was still out there, and he was not done fighting yet. As the chaos continued, Ava realized that this was just the beginning. They had fought bravely, but the battle was far from over. She looked at her team, their faces filled with determination, and she knew they would not back down. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, united in their mission to protect humanity and prove that they were not to be underestimated. The fight for Colony Alpha was far from over, but Ova and her team were ready to rise to the challenge. A desperate gamble. The atmosphere buzzed with tension as the battle reached a fever pitch. Ava, breathing heavily, felt the weight of exhaustion tugging at her limbs. But there was no time to rest. The fight for Colony Alpha was far from over, and the Varkarian leader still lurked in the chaos, determined to crush humanity's spirit. "Regroup," Ava shouted, her voice rising above the din of battle. She motioned for her team to gather around her. "We need to strategize. We can't keep throwing ourselves at them like this." Max and the other soldiers hurried over, their expressions reflecting the fatigue and determination shared by all. "What's the plan?" Max asked, wiping sweat from his brow. "We need to lure their leader into a vulnerable position," Ava explained, scanning the battlefield for any sign of the Varkarian leader. "If we can take him down, it might disrupt their entire force." Dr. Lion joined them, still clutching her device. "I can create a distraction to draw him out, but I'll need you all to hold the line while I set it up." "It's risky, but it might just work." "Risky is better than standing here waiting for them to overrun us," Ava replied, determination igniting within her. "Let's do it." The soldiers dispersed, taking their positions while Dr. Lion began working on her device. Ava watched as her team prepared for what lay ahead. The atmosphere felt electric, a mix of fear and courage swirling around them. Ava took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts. They were outnumbered, but they had heart and unity on their side. They were fighting for their future, and that made them strong. Suddenly, the ground shook with the heavy footfalls of the Varkarians. Ava's heart raced as the enemy charged forward, their leader at the front, his eyes blazing with anger. He was determined to crush the humans, and Ava knew this would be their moment to turn the tide. "Hold your positions," Ava commanded, raising her weapon. The soldiers braced themselves, ready to defend their home. Dr. Lion continued to work, her focus unwavering. Ava felt the tension in the air as the Varkarians drew closer. The moment of truth was upon them. "Get ready," Ava shouted, her voice steady. She watched as the Varkarian leader approached, his massive frame cutting a fearsome figure through the smoke and chaos. "Now, Dr. Lion." With a swift motion, Dr. Lion activated her device, sending out a burst of light and sound that pierced through the chaos. The distraction was immediate and effective, causing the Varkarian leader to halt, confused by the sudden brilliance. "Now, push forward," Ava yelled, taking the lead as the soldiers surged out from their positions. They charged towards the Varkarian leader, the element of surprise on their side. The Varkarian leader roared in fury, his eyes narrowing as he turned to face the oncoming humans. "You dare challenge me?" he bellowed, raising his weapon. But the surprise was enough to unbalance him, and Ava seized the opportunity. "Take him down," she shouted, her heart racing as she fired at the leader. The blast hit its mark, striking the Varkarian in the shoulder. He stumbled back, snarling in anger, but it only fueled his rage. The Varkarians around him rallied, charging toward the humans in a desperate attempt to protect their leader. Ava and her team fought valiantly, firing at the advancing aliens as they pressed forward. But the Varkarian leader quickly regained his composure, and he retaliated with ferocity. He swung his weapon, firing blasts of energy that exploded around the soldiers, sending debris flying and knocking some to the ground. "Stay strong," Ava shouted, rallying her team. "We can't let him take us down. Keep pushing." With each blast exchange, Ava felt the pressure mounting. The battle was fierce, and they needed to stay focused. The soldiers fought with everything they had, but the Varkarian leader was relentless. He was powerful, and every blow he delivered sent shockwaves through their ranks. "Dr. Lion, can you set up another trap?" Ava shouted, glancing back to see her friend working frantically. "I can try, but I need cover," Dr. Lion called back, her voice strained with effort. "Max, cover Dr. Lion. The rest of us will hold the line," Ava commanded. Max nodded and sprinted toward Dr. Leon, positioning himself to protect her as she worked. Ava turned her attention back to the Varkarian leader, who was now targeting Max and Dr. Lion. "Not on my watch," she roared, charging forward with renewed determination. As Ava engaged the leader in battle, her heart pounded in her chest. She felt the weight of the universe on her shoulders. This was their moment, their chance to show the galaxy that humanity would not be underestimated. The Varkarian leader swung his weapon at Ava, who barely dodged in time. The blast hit the ground behind her, sending dirt and debris flying. Ava retaliated, firing again, but the leader was quick, dodging her shots with surprising agility. Just then, Dr. Lion's device emitted a loud beep, signaling that it was ready. "Now," she shouted, activating the trap. A bright flash filled the air, disorienting the Varkarian leader for just a moment. Ava seized the opportunity, charging forward and firing at the leader with all her might. The blast struck him squarely, and he staggered back, fury radiating from him. Together, Ava yelled to her team, "Now is our chance." With a united cry, the soldiers pushed forward, their weapons blazing. The Varkarian leader roared in anger, but he was outnumbered. The humans pressed their advantage, surrounding him and attacking with everything they had. As the leader faltered, Ava felt a surge of hope. They could do this. They could defeat him. She fought with fierce determination, knowing that the fate of their home depended on this moment. With one final push, they overwhelmed the Varkarian leader. He fell to the ground, defeated. The remaining Varkarians paused, confusion and fear flashing across their faces. "Now, keep pushing," Ava shouted, rallying her team. The soldiers charged forward, determination coursing through them as they pressed the attack. The tide of battle had shifted. The Varkarians, seeing their leader down, began to retreat. Ava could hardly believe it. They had done it. But even in their victory, Ava knew they had to remain vigilant. This battle was just one step in a larger war, and they needed to be prepared for whatever came next. "Regroup," Ava shouted, trying to catch her breath. "We need to assess our injuries and prepare for a potential counterattack." As her team gathered, the weight of the battle began to sink in. They had fought bravely, but the war was far from over. Ava looked around at her soldiers, their faces a mix of exhaustion and triumph. They had faced the unimaginable and emerged victorious. In that moment, Ava felt a deep sense of pride. They were not just fighting for survival. They were proving that humanity could stand strong against the odds. The fight for Colony Alpha had only just begun, but together they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. They were united, determined, and ready to show the galaxy what humanity was truly capable of. "You said," the aftermath of victory. The battle had ended, but the air still crackled with tension. Ava stood among her team, surveying the remnants of the fierce fight. The ground was scared, filled with debris and echoes of the chaos that had just unfolded. The Varkarian leader lay defeated, and his army was retreating, but the victory felt bittersweet. "Is everyone okay?" Ava asked, scanning the faces of her team. Max had a gash on his arm, and Dr. Lion looked shaken but unharmed. "We'll be fine," Max said, attempting to smile despite the pain. "Just a scratch. We need to keep moving." Dr. Lion nodded, her eyes wide with disbelief at what they had just accomplished. "That was incredible, but we can't let our guard down. The Varkarians will regroup, and they'll come back stronger." Ava agreed, feeling the weight of their victory settling on her shoulders. "We need to assess the colony and prepare for their return. They won't take this loss lightly." As the team began to gather their equipment and check for survivors among their ranks, Ava felt a swell of pride. They had fought against impossible odds and managed to repel the Varkarians. Yet she also understood that this was only the beginning. The remnants of Colony Alpha lay scattered around them, signs of destruction mingling with signs of life. Some buildings still stood, but many were crumbling or on fire. Ava felt a pang of sorrow at the sight. This was their home, and they had to protect it. "Let's split up and search for any remaining civilians," Ava ordered, her voice firm. "We need to ensure everyone is safe. Max, you and Dr. Lyon take the east side. I'll check the west." As they moved out, Ava couldn't shake the sense of urgency that clung to her. The battle had shown the strength of humanity, but it had also exposed vulnerabilities. They needed to fortify their defenses, gather more allies, and prepare for the next attack. As Ava moved through the wreckage, she spotted a group of civilians huddled together in a small shelter. Relief washed over her. "We're here. It's safe now," she called out, rushing toward them. The group slowly emerged, their faces pale but hopeful. "Thank you for coming," an elderly man said, his voice trembling. "We were so scared." "We'll get you all to safety," Ava promised, motioning for the others to help. She could see fear in their eyes, and it reminded her of the stakes they faced. "Stay close to us. We'll take you to the secure area." As they guided the civilians through the debris-strewn streets, Ava couldn't help but feel the weight of their responsibility. They were not just fighting for themselves. They were fighting for everyone who called Colony Alpha home. They needed to inspire hope and strength in those who had witnessed the horrors of the battle. "Look," one of the civilians shouted, pointing to the sky. Ava turned to see several Varkarian ships retreating, their dark shapes silhouetted against the fading sun. "They're leaving?" another civilian asked, wide-eyed. "For now," Ava replied, her heart racing. "But we can't relax. They will return, and we must be ready." Once they had escorted the civilians to safety, Ava rejoined her team. "How did it go?" she asked, noting the determination in Max's eyes despite his injuries. "We found some more survivors," Max reported, his voice steady. "But many homes are destroyed. We need to set up temporary shelters." "Agreed," Ava said. "Let's gather everyone and organize the recovery efforts. We need to make sure our people are safe and secure. Then we can start planning our next move against the Varkarians." Dr. Lyon approached, her expression serious. "We should also analyze what we learned from this battle. We managed to defeat their leader, but we need to understand their tactics better. They may have new strategies for the next attack." Ava nodded, appreciating her insight. "Let's set up a command center in one of the remaining buildings. We'll discuss our plans and analyze what we've observed." As they moved toward a relatively intact structure, Ava felt the weight of their situation press down on her. The loss and destruction were evident, but they had also shown their resilience. They had fought bravely, and they had won, but at what cost? Inside the building, they gathered around a makeshift table, laying out maps and reports. Ava's heart raced as she considered their next steps. They were not just fighting for survival. They were fighting to show the universe that humanity would not be underestimated. "First, we need to strengthen our defenses," Ava began. "We should train more soldiers and gather supplies. We also need to send messages to nearby colonies and request support. We can't do this alone." Max nodded. "I can reach out to our allies. They need to know what's happening here. And I can continue to analyze the Varkarian technology," Dr. Lyon added. "If we understand how their weapons work, we can find ways to counter them." Ava felt a spark of hope ignite within her. "We'll turn this setback into an opportunity. We'll learn from our mistakes and prepare for the next battle. Together, we can show the galaxy that humanity is a force to be reckoned with." The team worked late into the night, laying the groundwork for their next moves. As they strategized, Ava felt a sense of purpose guiding her. They were warriors, defenders of their home, and they would not back down. When the sun rose the next morning, it illuminated the damage done to Colony Alpha, but it also highlighted the strength of its people. As Ava looked out over the remnants of the battle, she felt the determination in her heart. They had faced destruction and adversity, but they would rise again. Together, they would fight for their future, and they would not let anyone underestimate the strength of humanity.